Let's guess we're going to week 3 of the NCSSA playoffs, third round. So, Dale, I'll tell you what, it's going to be exciting, isn't it?
I think so.
Got a lot of good games 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A. I mean, 2A, I was looking at I forgot what it was. It was the East, or I think it was in the East. That maybe it was, no, it was in the West, where I think every team either is undefeated or they only have one loss. I mean, it's just incredible, the parity.
Hey, guess who's here? Okay. I don't see you, but are you on your phone? Okay. Did it ask you to give your camera permission? Okay. So we've invited Anthony Perkins. All right, Anthony, I'm gonna hang up. Can you hear? Can tell me if you can hear us through? All right, let me hang up on this. All right. Okay, so hopefully Anthony, can you hear us?
I hope you can.
So Anthony might need to go out and come back in. If you can hear us, Anthony, because since you were talking with me on the phone, your microphone may have been taken over and not released. So, guys, anybody that's out there, if you'll hang on, looks like we got one viewer. I'm going to text Anthony. We were talking. Do it again. Slip her out. I like being able to send text messages from my PC. Okay. Yeah, so it's I thought it was a pretty interesting week last week. And quite honestly, it was
okay. Here we go.
All right, we've got Anthony.
All right.
Yeah, excellent. And maybe if we can see Garrett, he'll be on with us. We'll see if it'll let him come on. It turns him right back off. He must have bad connection again. I'll try to keep a look for you, Garrett, if you show up down there in the bottom, but it's turning you off. Say something, Garrett.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's see if we can get this more. So last week, I thought, if you think about it, it was really what we would traditionally consider to be the first round of the playoffs. Just in that we are going 6 rounds this year, and the first is I'm not going to call it a qualifier. I understand because we don't have splits. We're kind of doing this a little bit differently. But when you looked at the number of games of top powers going against each other and the records of the teams going against each other, wow. And the same's true this week, Jim.
Yeah, it's crazy. I went to a game on Thursday night. Hillside hosted Apex. Hillside's undefeated. Apex, I think, only had one loss. They may have had 2, but I think it was just one. And final score is 46-43. And then I went to Greensboro, over to Simeon Stadium in Greensboro where Grimsley plays. And a beautiful stadium, by the way. I found out from a friend that it was pretty much geared to look a lot like Wallace Wade Stadium, and the more I think about it, it really did the traditional Wallace Wade Stadium.
Right.
And saw a great game. It was Grimsley won 42-30 over Charlotte Catholic. But just think about that. Having those two teams play was essentially the first round of the playoffs. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of good teams, but at the same time, there's not really not a lot of great teams. Just a handful of great teams in the state. But there's a lot of parity throughout the state, if you ask me.
Yeah, and in fact, the great teams might be down in the um, 2A and 3A part of the playoffs. And we're talking traditional. That's not to take anything away from the 4A teams this year. It's just that 4A doesn't seem to be as powerful. I went to, in the rain to see Olympic and Independence play, and that was an interesting game. Uh, Very interesting to see what Independence is doing. Let me get right here on camera. And then Friday night, I went over and watched West Charlotte and High Brighton play. And again, neither of those two games for me had end results as far as winners that were surprising to me. Just the score difference, and actually both of them. Anthony, where'd you go?
I'm right
I
here.
know where you went, but you tell everybody.
I went to. I'm sorry. I know what you're talking. I didn't catch that. Thursday night. I went to see South Point and Dudley play. Then Friday evening, I went to play Smoky Mountain.
Oh,
The Thursday night game was somewhat of a surprise. I thought South Point had a good chance, but I never thought the score would end up like it did. And the Friday night game between Kings Mountain and Smoky Mountain, that game ended up pretty much like I thought it would. South actually won, I think, by 28. No, was it 28 or 35? Anyway, they really didn't have any trouble with Smoky Mountain. South Point, they're Dudley. Last year, 38-0. And then, the prognosticators had Dudley win last Friday night, and some people had South Point win by, I think, 3 points. So it all depends on who you was listening to. But of course, wound up 74-41 in a tornado contest. But it was a pretty good football game. But I never, not my wildest dream. I think South Point scored more points on Dudley had scored on them all year long. I think they went through their conference and only one scored again. So that surprised you. I don't care who you're going for. As far as how the other games are turning out, golly, how y'all. I don't know what y'all's format is. I'm new to this tonight, but there's some good games on tap for this weekend.
Oh yeah.
yeah. So what we'll do is we'll go over the bracket and look at the games. You were breaking up just a little bit. Definitely want your input. Those that don't know, Anthony is he knows a lot about let's say the western part of North. Actually, he's got a good understanding across the whole state, especially in the lower classifications. And if you want to know something about South Point Red Raider football, this is the man to tell you right here. You want to know something about trains? This is the man to tell you as well.
Oh, gracious.
So I'll see if Garrett can come on. I just see a blank screen and I don't hear anything from him. Before we get into the the bracket breakdown, we had a pretty tragic situation happen up in Virginia,
Yes, I know.
and I won't dwell on it. I don't know how you guys feel. It's to me, it's a real sad situation that youth are struck down for meaningless things. Um, it's there's nothing more than I can say than it's a tragic situation, and I don't know. I don't know if you guys want to say anything. It does bother me deeply. Of course, one of the players played here in Charlotte, and
Right.
um, I didn't really know him. I said hey to him maybe a couple of times. He played up at Huff High School. If I had more than a minute conversation with him, that was it. So I really can't speak to um, anything about him other than what others have said. Nonetheless, even the players or the young people, I don't really want to think of them as players. Even though I don't know them, I still somewhat grieve that young life is struck down like that.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Dale. It's hard. It's almost like we're bracing ourselves for the next shooting or the next massacre. Or it's it's. I don't like feeling this way. Obviously, it's you go to football games and you have a shooting like you did over in Duplin County, the James Keenan Wallace Rose Hill. Luckily, nobody got hurt there, but it's like it's a combination of so many bad things coming together, and we anytime you have a life that is struck down by a gun, it makes me sad, and it really makes me sad when you have a young adult or a child that's taken down, and uh, it's almost like you're numb after it happens, and I'm still processing what happened in Virginia. It's just I mean, I'm a big UNC fan alum, but right now my heart's totally a Cavalier right now. It's what that community is going through. It's just a total tragedy.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, hard to continue with the mindset that it's just a sign of the time that we're living in. Is that I would have what colors for what makes this way. Uh, my wife were talking about what really or where
Anthony, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
okay.
Now
About
we
There we
can
go.
hear you.
okay.
Now we can hear you.
Just let me get a little closer. Uh, Me and my wife were talking the other day. I agree with what you just said. I mean, this goes beyond athletics. It doesn't matter who you pull for. Whenever something like this happens, athletics goes out, sports goes out the window. Because this is life. This is life we're talking about. We're not talking about who wins football game, who wins basketball game. But me and my wife were talking about this situation, and there's a mindset that it seems like it's swept across our nation now. I'm not saying it's the right one, but it seems like, well, that's just the way that things are right now. But do they have to be that way? And another thing is, it seems like most of these places that these tragedies are taking place is where our kids are at, or where our kids are located, either at schools or at venues where sports events are being held and things of that nature. And I mean, I know it's not a safe place out. And I mean, you could die any moment from anything, but these are needless deaths. They don't have to take place. I don't know. People just need to wake up. I don't know what the deal is.
You know, I I've been. I don't know what it does for me, but I have been reading as much as I can on this situation to see if there was an understanding of why the shooting occurred. And I read a comment or a statement from one of the people on the bus who said right before the shooting, I can't remember the exact words, but it's this is what for what y'all been doing to me or something along those lines. They said that he had sat at the back of the bus kind of quietly the entire trip from Washington back, and he had not nobody had bothered him. So it's possible that maybe there had been some kind of, I'm not saying this occurred, but by that one statement leads one to believe there might be some form of bullying that had taken place um, prior. It's the only thing I think from what we've seen with some of these shootings, they do indicate or do kind of point back to bullying, with the school shootings, bullying being an issue at hand, which leads to mental health issues. And I think the bigger problem is we have a mental health issue here in the United States or on this planet.
Yeah.
It needs to be
Yeah.
addressed. And we're
I
kind
agree.
of, we take an attitude of, oh, you'll get over that, or um, stop thinking that way. Um, do this to change this. And as someone who suffers from a bit of OCD and maybe some ADHD and anxiety and a few other things, depression. Um, I know that these are not things you can just say. Somebody will tell you, cheer up, or well, just stop thinking that way. Um, it doesn't work like that. And
No, it's a lot of times when people say that, it's a lack of empathy.
it's a
And
it's a strong lack of empathy. It's a strong um, point to ignorance, and that's one of the problems. Is I think we're ignorant to mental health, um, and we need to be better about this.
a lot of times people will, if you're depressed or sad, they tend to shun away from you. They want to celebrate with you when you're on the peaks of the mountain, but when you're in the valley, a lot of times those people they leave, they want to disconnect with you because of that. Uh, it's the big thing is we got to have a better understanding of well-being. I think everybody to a certain degree has a certain mental illness, whether it's depression, anxiety, OCD. We all have issues. I know I have issues. Dale, you just shared, you gave your story. We all have to realize that, and also to make sure that we do add, implement some safeguards to help us. Sometimes it can be behavioral stuff. It could be diet. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I function a lot better with 8 hours of sleep than I do 6 hours of sleep.
Hmm.
You make better decisions and stuff like that. And once you reach that threshold where you might be able to control having a gun, and when you're, well, quote unquote sane, but then once you cross that threshold where you can't decipher between good and evil, right and wrong, that's where we're having an issue right now. And uh, this is something the whole nation needs to get around. It's not a liberal versus a conservative. This is a societal issue.
It's a human thing, and
Yeah.
I get it from my wife sometimes that there are just certain things with me that if you know me long enough, you know that I'm very stringent on facts and points, and um, I tend to be more linear on things, if that makes sense, and logic, and all these other little things that that OCD people and Actually, ADHD can kind of, I guess, I never thought about ADHD. My son was diagnosed with it. My oldest son was just recently, and he and I are a lot alike. And we started talking about things, and I won't get into some of the things that we talked about, but he told me, he said, you might have ADHD. So he throws up a YouTube video and we watch it, and it, points out some of the points. But what I was going to say is, and my wife sat there and watched that. And guys, I want to mention something to you because I'm really a big fan of this. There's a YouTube channel, SBSK, and that is Special Books for Special Kids. And this is a guy who spent the first part of his work life in special education in school, working with children with disabilities, all kinds of disabilities. Some are nonverbal, just a gamut of things. And my oldest granddaughter, who I cherish greatly, I cherish all my grandchildren. We think she's on the spectrum for autism. She's highly functional, highly smart, but she has some of these characteristics that fall under autism, sensory perception issues, and ADHD, and maybe OCD. These different, or pure O. She's not got pure O, which is that's really bad. But because she has some of these issues and she can get emotional very quickly, I started trying to learn more because I want to understand what triggers her so she doesn't get triggered, and how I might be able to help her. And so I've been watching this SBSK because it's about people who, he goes around and interviews kids and adults who are born with genetic disorders, and you name the condition, he's probably interviewed somebody. And it's taught me a lot about how to better appreciate people who are different than us, and not, when I came up, I hate to say it, people used to make this stupid comment about, he must have rode the short bus to school, trying to indicate you aren't very intelligent. That's not right.
No.
And it's these kinds of issues that I think leads to the shootings, the way that we treat fellow humans. We don't treat them as humans. We want to have some kind of, we want to be better than other people. And I hope I don't strive to be better than other people. I might strive to be better at something, but as a human, I don't think I'm better, and I don't think I'm worse. But I certainly don't think I'm better than anyone else.
No, you don't tear people down to make yourself look better. I mean, that's the big thing. And a lot of people, when they do this bullying stuff, they're not feeling good inside themselves. So to make themselves feel better, they have to tear other people down. And I mean, anybody who's gone through middle school or junior high school has probably, I'm going to say probably 90% of the people have gone through some form of bullying that is inside their heads. I know I had problems in like 6th and 7th grade with, certain people that just were miserable inside. And it's, all my friends have the same issues, it's just something that's, people, again, it's an empathy stuff. It also, kids also mimic a lot of things they see from adults.
Yep.
And I mean, right now, I'll tell you right now, I've been in organizations where you have somebody at the very top that acts like an idiot, and they do very bad behavior, and their direct reports are going to mimic that. And their direct reports will mimic that. A lot of times it's about tone at the top, and, having a good family structure or a good guardian structure, having people good teachers. Teachers are there to build you up, and I had some great teachers growing up. Didn't have any issues with teachers for the most part, except for a few. But I think that has a lot to do with it too. And you can go on the news and you can hear somebody brag about how great they are and how bad the other person is, and people mimic that stuff, and they're like, okay, this is acceptable, so let me do the same thing.
Anthony, you were an acting pastor, so you probably encountered situations where you had to counsel people, adult or youth. You have anything you want to say about it?
Oh well, first off, this what we're sitting here discussing now is a multi-faceted problem. There's not a quick fix. Part of it is the fact that like was mentioned a while ago, people are mimicking what other people do, good or bad. What you hope for is good examples so that people follow those, but unfortunately, that ain't all that everybody gets. And yeah, I had to counsel families about rebellious things and things of that nature, but husbands and wives, having difficulties within their marriages, but as far as one, I'm not saying this is true in all cases, but I think there's another aspect to some. I'm not saying all of this. Some of this is genuinely motivated because people were mistreated whenever they. But we can't just lay it all on that because I really want to be honest. Probably half. Whenever you look back on your school years, and probably half the kids were bullies and half of the kids were bullied. Okay. But all of them didn't turn out to be serial killers or go in and shoot people up. And I know times are different now. A lot of things, the things kids are exposed to on video games and TV and everything else. But there's another aspect that people just don't want to talk about, and that's the fact that I believe there's just real evil in the world too. You can't blame everything on mental health. Some of it you can. I understand that, but not all of it. And if you don't want to blame it on mental health, or on the fact that there's, if goodness exists, evil has to exist too. Okay, you can't have it one way. So it's not a one way deal. Basic psychology teaches that, yin and yang, everything. There's positive, there's negative, there's black, there's white. And so has nothing to do with race either. There's a black color and there's a white color. And that's an aspect I think of this problem that nobody wants to talk about. The fact that there's still some people are just mean, but you can't. But I don't think that's the majority. I think the majority of it stems from either emotional or psychological problems. But the problem is these people that are wanting to bully people. They don't know the psychological makeup of the people that they're bullying. So, how do you fix all this? I have no idea.
Anthony, you brought up a really good point though about there's being evil in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever know of Mickey Eford. He's a professor was a professor theologian over at Duke University. He's an ordained Presbyterian minister. And then he was an interim pastor at the Baptist church. So he did the Holy Trinity of the Christian denominations. You had Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist. But anyway, I was in a service one time, and he talked about how he was with a bunch of families or a bunch of people, and he said, "How many people how many believe that you were born with sin?" And you have people raise their hands, and then he says, "Well, I want you to tell me who thinks that you were not born, you can't be born with sin." Other people raised their hands. And then he said, well, who has kids? And the ones that raised their hand the first time all raised their hands again. As anybody as a parent knows that that there's a certain level of sin or evilness in a lot of us, but I agree with your point on that. I think it's a beautiful point.
Well, no,
Well, one of the things I wanted to say, Anthony, as far as the mental aspect of it, and even though there are a lot of people bullied, I was bullied. I was pulled into the back of after a football practice and youth ball, pulled into the back of covered, pickup truck by three bullies, and they punched on my stomach and blah blah blah. I'm not killing people, but
right,
I think that the problem is that there are issues that people face without being bullied mentally, and it's things that they can't control. So ADHD is just something that uh, that's just uncontrollable. You got it, and you got it to a certain degree.
right,
Um, OCD, these things that some people are not impacted by them. Some people are very heavily impacted
exactly.
by them.
You don't know which ones are which.
Right.
No, you don't know which one's which. But what I'm saying here is that the ones that are, so usually those people, the ones that are more heavily affected with something, like Jeff said, has Asperger's, and um, people who have issues tend to stand out, and they tend to draw more attention from bullies. But the thing is, I think that some people can get over it. They don't let it, they're able to control it and not let it drive them to a revenge factor,
Right,
but some can't.
right,
And um, that's what I think. So that's why I don't believe we see a huge problem, but that's why I believe it's a major part of it. How do you fix it? It's a whole nother story. It's got to
right,
start because usually bullies are bullied by their parents. Um,
right,
I know that other from some bullies that I know. I know how their parents treated
right,
them, and they're just mimicking, as Jim said earlier. They get beat for nothing, or get demeaned for nothing, and then they feel like, well, that's an adult, and they're being better than me, so that's how I'm better than someone.
right.
As society's got to address it. I don't know that it's addressable. That's I don't know that it's fully addressable. But you're right. Evil needs goodness. There's going to be always there's a balance to everything, or
Exactly.
a counter to everything, I should say.
I was just going to add one thing to that. And now, he said he was talking about the minister a while ago and got the people to raise their hands for this and raise their hands for that. And I would just simply say this: no parents ever had to talk to their child. No parent has ever had to teach their child how to tell a lie.
You got that right.
Is that true or not?
That is
Is it
true.
truth or not?
Oh,
That's
you're,
true. And so
you're
they
exactly right.
obviously that's a good indicator that the parents or influential adults around them lie.
Right,
Um, they learn the trait, and they learn the I guess maybe better than anything, they learn that they can get by with it.
well, I don't know.
uh,
And I know this ain't about football, but I think children learn they learn to tell lies while they're still in the crib. I mean, they'll cry whenever there's nothing wrong with them, and the only
right.
thing they do is pick them up. So I mean, they didn't learn that from their mom and daddy. They learned that from from our parents' response. Okay, they cry, we give them attention, but I
Well,
mean,
that strikes to the getting by with it part, doesn't
but yeah, but if there's nothing wrong with them, I mean, when you stop and think about it, they're just lying to you. They want some attention.
it? Okay, we talked 30 minutes. Let's
We still haven't solved any world problems though.
no, we haven't. No. Let's take a look at 1A. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna share. And I'm sorry, I tried to add. I added Garrett in, but he never. I guess he's just got too many technical difficulties.
Yeah, he sent a
Um,
message to us.
so Jeff has got made a good comment here. I embrace my special traits. SBSK. Look into it. It's a great. It'll help you. It'll help anybody, no matter where your empathy sits. It'll help you. Um, but I guess Garrett is having too many issues. So let's hopefully you guys can see this.
I can.
Let's start on the east side.
Okay. So we're going to talk about last week's game, or we're going to look at this week's matchups.
This week's.
Okay. Well, Tarboro Riverside Martin, that actually they've played already this season. They're in the same conference, and Tarboro handled Riverside Martin with fair ease. That game's going to be at Tarboro. I just think Tarboro is the cream of the crop in 1A, and I think Tarboro should win. I mean, Riverside Martin might make it interesting for 3 quarters, but I just think Tarboro's running offense. I mean, they run, and then run some more. I think it would be hard for any team in the 1A East to stop them.
Yeah, East or West, this is the team to beat. Nothing more to say. Really, they are the team to beat. Anthony?
Well, I have to agree with you because, to be honest with you, I haven't really kept up with these teams at all this year. Just a lot of other things going on. I've got 2 kids that started college this year, and so we had to help get them off to college. So I've not put as much effort into keeping up with all the sports across the state as I have in the past. I pretty much focus just on Western teams, but I do know Tarboro is in the 1A. They're a powerhouse, and I think they're probably the team to beat.
The way you can look at Tarboro, Anthony, just the way you've always looked at them.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Traditional power that is keeping the tradition going.
Like a couple of other schools in the 2A section of this part of the state, yeah.
Exactly. All right, let's scroll down.
Now, this game here, this West Columbus, Northampton County, this has the makings to be a pretty decent game. Historically, West Columbus has struggled considerably, and Northampton County's been around for about 11, 12 years. So it was a consolidation between Northampton West and Northampton East. And before that, you had teams like Gaston, Gunberry, Enfield, and so forth. But looking at it, I think Northampton County will win this game. It has the makings to be a fairly close game, though. I can see West Columbus winning, but I give Northampton County probably a 7 to 10 point advantage.
Yeah, I agree. 1 score advantage here. Could be a good game, though.
Yeah.
It could be a good game. Obviously, 1 score game, I guess, would be a good game.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I guess Anthony doesn't want to say anything there.
I'm good.
All right. You speak up when you want to speak up.
Okay.
Now, this next one, Rosewood and Hopton, that's going to be an interesting game right there. They're conference foes, and I think Rosewood won the first match. I like Hopton for some reason. I know about their coaching staff, and I know that they're very well respected. If Hopton wins, it's not going to be an upset. To me, it's a toss-up, but I'm going to lean to Hopton. I just think that little extra experience, coaching experience, might pay dividends this time of the year.
Yeah, I can agree with that. They being that it's the playoffs, but Rosewood did beat them pretty handily the first time they played.
Gotcha.
Now, whether that translates to what's going to happen this week, I don't know.
Right.
Because you don't really know what happens in a game that ends up being lopsided. It may not be the same result the next time because there were some serious factors that made that so, especially in 1A, where you have so few players on a team that a player can have a huge impact on the entire team. So I don't know. I would, I can agree with you that it could be close. I think my betting donut to a dollar to the donut goes to Rosewood, but
Gotcha.
I understand.
All right, this next one, this is over. Game's going to be in Robbins over in Moore County against the Jim Catfish Hunter team, Perquimans. Perquimans County is the northeastern part of the state, so that's going to be a pretty good travel. I almost guess it's probably a 4 to 4.5 hour travel
Mhm.
from Hereford, North Carolina, all the way down to Robbins. Northmore, they run a double wing. I saw them earlier on this season. They are fast. They are a deep team, believe it or not. They have over 40 players on their varsity, and they have a pretty good JV squad. Northmore is not known for having a football program. At that point, neither is Perquimans, but
Right.
I think Northampton's going, or Northmore probably win three to four scores.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything real to say about this game. I think this is a Northmore win. Sorry.
Right.
But, you're going to have to bring it to be able to hang in this game, I think. Let's go over to the west side. Well, we're going to start with a big one here.
That is a big one. And this one right here is who is the most healthy of these two squads? Both teams are a little bit banged up. I know Robbinsville's had their injuries probably 3-4 weeks ago. Eastern Randolph got banged up in the last week or so. It's going to be a pretty good one on this. I saw Eastern Randolph play earlier on this season, so I'm a little bit biased. I'm going to take Eastern Randolph. But the one thing about Eastern Randolph, they're not a deep team. They only have about 25, 26 players on varsity, although I know that their JV team is up. But again, it's my bias. I'm going to take Eastern Randolph.
Sure. This is the first real game. I think real, competitive game for both of the programs in the playoffs.
Right.
Randolph, as I recall, they got a bye. Let me scroll up to see that I'm right. Yeah, they did. They got a bye. The bad thing about 1A is that there are some very good teams, and there's a whole lot of not so good.
Right.
Not even enough to fill the brackets teams overall. So I think this is the makings of being a good game, but a donut bet would be Eastern Randolph.
I think Anthony's volumes I can hear him.
Yeah, I can't either. I heard you, Anthony, when you first started to talk, and then it.
Yeah, I think as far as the game goes, I think that Eastern Randolph probably by about 14 points. But the volume on my cell phone is off. Right?
Okay. I think he said the volume on his phone might be
Cell
off,
phone.
or
Yeah,
cell phone.
It still works.
Okay.
heard you there. Yep. Okay. So I think he got his points in. His donuts going for Eastern Randolph.
Right. Now this next game, Hayesville has had a pretty good playoffs. I mean, they beat Decent Allegheny team. They beat Christ the King, which a lot of people consider to be an upset. I thought that game could go either way, and it did with Hayesville. Mount Airy, though, is Mount Airy. I think this game could be ugly really fast. I'm taking Mount Airy big.
I am too. I'd say Mount Airy by 24.
Yeah, so we're all on the same plate there.
Right.
Nice plate of donuts.
This is a big one right here. Thomasville and Drawn. Drawn is something special. They are probably, I want to say they're in the one top three teams in the mountain area, like the best team in the Western Highlands by far. They handled Mitchell pretty easily twice this year. They beat Union Academy in the first round. Thomasville, they just keep on winning. They did a shutout against Wayne County. I'm looking forward to see how Thomasville's defense and Drawn's offense goes. So far, not many people can stop Drawn, but I don't think Thomasville's had I don't think Drawn's faced a team as tough as Thomasville. I'm going with Drawn on this one. I think they're going to go from Valdez down to Davidson County and win that game.
The big thing about Drawn and Thomasville here, but again, competition's different. But Drawn, not quite 2 times the points but they maybe about 75% more points they've produced than Thomasville has. And I don't know how much we relate to the level of competition. I'm a Thomasville fan, but again, a donut bet is on Drawn. But it'll be interesting because Thomasville brings some good defense. That's what they're going to have to do.
They've been doing great defense since George Kushwa was their head coach back in the 50s. As a very good program. I mean, you had
Right.
Alan Brown and Benji Brown, and you had Wes Matera was there. And
well, I think their win last week was pretty. I don't want to say impressive, but it was. I think it was a solid win over Swain County.
It was definitely a statement on their part.
Yeah.
Last week they played.
I can't hear you, Anthony. I gotta help. I need to help Anthony get that corrected so that next week. Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony. What's up with your microphone? Your video's staying good, which kind of tells me that I don't think it's your connection. It must be your microphone.
Might have some lid or something around it.
Breaking in and out.
Yeah. So I tell you what, we can do some hand signals. How
about
Anthony? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. There's a noise in the background, sounds like a jackhammer going off, but I don't know what that is. When it quits, I can hear y'all very well, and y'all can hear me. I'm gonna say on that Drawn game, Drawn's they are somewhat of a surprise. Usually, they had a pretty good team last year, but they really have improved a lot this year. But I'm like you. I'm like Dale. I think Drawn's going to pull this one out. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be by a field goal or by a touchdown or less. Probably around a field goal or maybe a missed extra point or something of that nature. But I'm picking Drawn to win this and in a close one.
Wow. Okay. Interesting game.
This one here this is a Smoky Mountain Conference Classic here. These two teams are going to be consolidating into one school in the next few years. Andrews, right now, it's like a team of destiny. It's hard for me to pull our pick against Murphy, but I'm picking Andrews in this one.
Andrews by 10.
Andrews by 10. I'm picking Andrews. Andrews needs to. Well, they don't need to show me anything. They just need to win. But can they win and can they keep advancing is the question. But I'm picking them to do it. So let's go to the 2A. And boy, is this ever when we get over to the West.
Talking about Harbor the East while ago, and Thomasville's one of those teams in the West. Either Murphy or Andrews, because those two teams are usually knocking each other in the head to see who advances.
Yep. Exactly.
I digress.
No, you don't. That's very valid point.
All right, for 2A, Princeton versus Cummings. That's going to be an interesting game. Cummings has got some really an explosive offense, great running back. Princeton, to me, has better defense and more well-rounded team. I'm going with Princeton in this. I'm going to say probably by about 10 points or so.
Me too.
Likewise.
Now, this bottom part here, Wallace Rose Hill versus Nash County or Nash Central. I know Nash Central, the game was going to be over Rocky Mount. I cannot pick against Wallace Rose Hill after they pretty much passed Northeastern. Northeastern all of a sudden caught on fire at the end of the season, and you can see Wallace Rose Hill won by 4. I'm going with Wallace Rose Hill right now. I don't think there's going to be a letdown.
This is hard because I think what you say is valid. And early on, I do like Wallace Rose Hill's chances to advance and advance. Man, it's hard to pick against Nash Central, but
well, it's hard to pick against Northern Nash in 3A, and it's hard to pick against Southern Nash.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to pick against all these teams over.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim, you're probably going to end up being right, but I think I lean to Nash Central.
Fair enough.
I think you're probably going to win that one. That donut there.
Well, I'm gonna go with you, Dale. I think it'd be a close one, but and it is hard to go against Wallace Rose Hills because they've been a presence in the state championships for the last couple of years. But
yep.
Nash Central's got a pretty good offense too.
There's a little bit of Cinderella, it's hard to go against. And I'm talking about with Wallace Rose Hill.
Right, exactly.
Now this next one, Whiteville versus Hereford County. I was really big on Hereford County at the beginning of the season, and then I realized they had some defensive problems. Whiteville has just kind of been under the radar the whole season. This one here is kind of a pick 'em for me. I'm going to give it to Whiteville just because it's a home game, but I think that game could really go either way, though. This is one of the closest ones in 2A.
Yeah, like you, I was big and maybe still stayed a little bit big. Maybe not big, but let's say behind Hereford. But I'm just gonna go out on the limb and I'm gonna pick them here because I just felt like earlier they could. I think this game's gonna be close regardless. Hard to beat a team at home. Third round of the playoffs. A lot of things, a lot of hurdles to jump there. But that's where my donut goes.
I'm going to, I think I agree with both of you guys. I think it's going to be a close game.
Now, this one right here is going to be a doozy one. Both Clinton and East Duplin, they've both been to state championships before. I'm going with East Duplin. I think East Duplin has been more consistent the whole year, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I think Clinton is somebody that you just can't take lightly. But East Duplin right now, they might be the best team in 2A on the west side or on the east side.
Yeah, I yeah, I'm going with you. I'm just keep thinking, can Clinton keep rolling? Um, but they're facing a pretty tough team here. So yeah, I'm taking East.
Likewise,
It's
for
just
the
kind
same.
of
Yeah.
hard to pick against them, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
That's a Friday apple. That's a Krispy Kreme Friday apple fritter. I want some of those this Friday.
Now, this game here, Reedsville Chase, I think this is a game that might be falling under the radar because there's so many other great games in 2A. This one right here could be a doozy of a game. Chase, can anybody stop Chase's offense? Can they stop that running attack? Uh, can they exploit Chase's defense? If there's a team that can, there's several teams that probably can. Reedsville is one of those teams. I'm picking
Mhm.
up Reedsville in this one. I think tradition and also just pure talent and depth is going to pull them across the finish line.
Same reasons, and also think this is a step up in competition. I'm not to take anything away from Chase. They've had a great year. Um, are they? You never know till teams because the comment's been made by both of us a lot that a lot of things aren't linear in football.
Yeah.
And there's also factors that can play huge called emotion, and those kind of factors could be on Chase's side, but it's hard to pick against Reedville. It's just that's just a bit that I can't do that.
Well, I'm sort of the same, almost identical thinking the way that you are, Dale. Chase has got a good team. I mean, they're 12-0,
Mm-hmm.
but if you look at the teams that they played with, I think only two or three of them had winning records. And so, you know, I think you do have to compare the competition. Who they played against versus who the other teams play. Who your opponent for this particular week is going to be has played against,
Yeah.
and not just look. I mean, there's two teams that are undefeated. Uh, so let's see. Am I right? No, Reedsville lost one game, uh, probably to a 3A school. I'm guessing, but uh,
Lost a 4A page, I believe, or I think it was page.
I
I
think it
think
was Page. Yeah.
yeah, I think that the competition is going to be a step up for Chase, and they're not in they're not they're away. They're at Reedsville, and Reedsville was one of those teams that I was talking about a while ago when we were talking about Tarboro. Uh, they're just out them, and there's a couple of teams, Shelby and Chase is a newcomer to this going this D. I don't know if they've ever been deep in the playoffs. If they have, I don't think they've been past this level. But uh, I think it'll be a good game. But I'm seeing Reedsville win by at least a touchdown, maybe two.
The RPI had them. An undefeated team gets pushed down to a number 8 seed.
Right,
Is an indicator that their their schedule wasn't very difficult.
right.
And Chase people, you can, players, you can prove it all on the field Friday night.
That's exactly right. Prove us wrong.
Prove us wrong. Now, here's a good game, I think.
Yeah, this game here could really go either way. I think Maiden won the first game 36-33 in the regular season. Uh, Bunker Hill, I think they only had that one loss, and Maiden had one loss to, I think, Watauga. Uh, well, Bunker Hill, could they, what's the word for it? Could they make Maiden pay back? I mean, there's a revenge factor in this one. I've kind of been going back and forth behind this. I just really don't know how good Maiden is right now, and this is one of those games I could see a quote unquote upset Bunker Hill, but I'm gonna still go with Maiden. I don't think Maiden's gonna take Bunker Hill lightly. They know what they can do.
I think that so Maiden's got a special player, Christopher Culliver. He's a UNC commit, Jim. You should be happy he's coming your way because that kid he's a great receiver, like 1,600 yards, 23 touchdowns. He has 4 interceptions on defense. Yeah, he goes both ways. He's a huge contributor both sides of the ball. The thing about Maiden and somewhat Bunker Hill, but especially Maiden's put up a lot of points this year. Almost 5,000 yards in offense, and it's I tell you, you're looking at a squad that the quarterback has just played phenomenally well. Wesley Thompson. One of the things that I look at in quarterbacks when it gets to be critical is what is your QBR rating? He's thrown the ball 239 times, so they throw a lot, and he's got somewhere around 3,300 yards, and his quarterback rating's up at 137. Um, the they've got a lot going for them here. Now it was a close game the last time. So Bunker Hill is not a pushover, and I bet Anthony's got some things to say about this. Hard to beat a good team twice.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw my donut, and I'll let you speak, Anthony. I'm throwing my donut with Maiden, but somebody might get it. Somebody might get that donut.
Well, they in the first meeting between these two teams this year, Maiden won by a score of 36-33, and they were playing at Maiden. So, and like you said, it's hard to beat the same team the second time of the year, especially whenever the game was that close. But if you compare the other teams the common opponents, Maiden performed better against all the common opponents.
Mm-hmm.
By not a real big margin, but in most cases by a pretty substantial margin, by at least a touchdown or two. So I don't know. Hard to pull against the Devils. I think that them being at home is certainly in their favor this weekend, and I believe that they'll pull out another close one.
A good friend, Gary Richmond, who you guys, if you ever watch Talking Preps, you may have seen him. Gary made a comment, when it comes down to a close game like this, there's 2 things he will use to sway him. Are they playing at home, and who has the better quarterback?
Right. I think
And
quarterback.
yeah, so I think it'll be an interesting game. I don't think anybody's going to be well, somebody's going to be disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, there's going to 50% of the fans will be disappointed. But I think if you had no dog in the fight, you would not be disappointed in watching this game.
Right. It could be a barn burner.
I think it will be. It's. You think it'll get into the 40s?
Oh, I don't know. Last time I think it was 36-33 the first
That's
time.
That's right.
It might get into the 40s. I always say this: the higher the score goes, the more it favors Maiden.
I agree with that. I think that Bunker Hill will have to play better on defense and try to keep the score lower.
Right.
But I do think it's going to creep into the 30s, and if it gets into the 40s, yeah, that starts to favor. You think at least it starts to favor Maiden.
Yeah, on paper it does. Yeah.
Right.
So this next game, Burns versus Salisbury, I hope Burns Field is better. I know it was a soggy mess after this last weekend. They thought there was a pipe that burst or something like that. Found out a bunch of golden lion tears drowned that place. Left all kinds of puddles around. But
Oh wow!
I'm playing guys that you're. If anybody that's a Shelby fan, I
Oh, that
have a good friend, several good friends over there. But Burns, they're on a roll right now. It's hard to pick against Burns. Salisbury, they're a very good team. They seem to get better. I've always been a little bit high on Salisbury. I have them ranked sixth in the in our rankings. We have Burns at number 2. I'm taking Burns by a couple touchdowns.
that's what I.
Yeah, I'm taking Burns. I think Burns is solid on both offense and defense. To be honest with you, I think Burns is not possibly, in my opinion, they're the best team in 2A.
I think so. I agree with you. I said I agree with what you're saying. 2 touchdowns, but it could be more than that. It could be considerably more than that if Burns gets on a roll.
I think so too. This is, last week against Shelby. Now, I didn't think there was any doubt that Burns would beat Shelby.
Right.
But they spanked. I mean, they built another woodshed to take Shelby to after they finished at the first woodshed.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming.
Because in the first game, of course, Burns won it, but they only won by 2 touchdowns. So, it was 42-0 last week. I mean, it was a shellacking.
42-0. They shut Shelby down. So, that was probably a statement for them. You're not Shelby. You might usually play well in the playoffs, but this is our playoffs. I can see that being
Right.
part of that statement. So they carry that mentality. This is no slouch that they're facing here. I would say Salisbury's a better team than Shelby.
Yeah, probably so.
That doesn't mean they don't lose by 21 plus points, but
Right.
I think we're all on the same table there.
Now, this next game, Monroe, East Surrey. This is I think these 2 teams played last year, and East Surrey won something like 10-9. I'll make this is my thoughts about this. If this is a high scoring game, I think it bodes well for Monroe. If East Surrey can keep this into a in the trenches struggle, I think East Surrey will win this game. This is a very interesting matchup because these 2 teams they're gonna go after each other. It's going to be a close one. It's not going to be a blowout one way or the other. I'm going with Monroe on this. For whatever reason, I'm just high on Monroe this year. I think their offense is might be a little bit more than East Surrey can handle. But at the same time, I think East Surrey's has a great offense. But Monroe might be a little bit better battle tested. They play some pretty tough teams in the non-conference.
Yes, they have those Union County teams. I thought you were going to pick East Surrey there for a second. I'm Monroe. I think that this side of the western half of the state is Monroe and Burns. That's my feelings on where things go, and I guess they're going to get to prove that out. But this is not going to be an easy win for Monroe. Should they be able to pull it out? I think it's going to be a very good ball game.
Well, I'm in agreement with both of y'all. I think Monroe will pull off the win here. I think that they'll win by at least 10 points. Monroe, and I don't have their stats for all year long, just for
I do.
games, but I know that they've been racking up a pretty good point total too this year.
540. Oh, no, that's Burns. Excuse me. I don't have Monroe's. I'd have to look it up. But
they scored over 100 points in the last 2 games. So
yeah, exactly.
So I mean, and one game was against Lincolnton, and the other one was against North Stanley. Again, not the two best teams that it's in the playoffs, obviously, but still, yet I mean that's a big point total. When you get to the playoffs and you score over 50 points, you're doing pretty good. But I don't know. I think that Monroe's, year after year here for the last, I don't know, past decade, they've been a team that you have to reckon with in the playoffs. And
Right.
so I think they're going to win tomorrow. And I think that they'll win not super easily, but I think that they'll win by 10 or more.
Here's a good stat for you. 557 points.
Okay,
They put up, and they've only given up 89.
that's a big point differential right there. Yeah,
Right. Now,
playing good on both sides of the ball.
East Surrey's put up 548 points, but they've given up 116, which is still not much.
Not much.
So I think it's just going to be a good ball game, very good ball game. And I put up on the screen. David Simmons stated he thinks Monroe will win state.
Oh, okay.
I think Burns is going to win state.
I agree with you. I think Burns will win.
I think this is the new era in Cleveland County, Shelby.
I don't think it's going to be North Stanley. And Anthony, just to let you know, I graduated from North Stanley. That's the reason why. Class of 1989, so that's why I say that.
Those Shelby fans better get used to it. Burns may have themselves a ring. Okay.
Hasn't Burns won one state title?
I think they did in like 90 something,
94
years back in the.
I was thinking around the mid to late 90s that they won a state title.
I don't remember that.
I think they won it as a 3A team too, if I remember correctly.
They used to be 3A.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
They've been 3A a couple of times, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go with.
I think
3A.
That was in the Southwestern 3A conference. You had Chase, South Point, Burns. I can't remember. I think Shelby was in that conference too as a 3A team, and East Rutherford, Burns, and East Rutherford, RS Central, and Chase. That was who was in that conference back then. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Olympic was in that conference.
Olympic was there like in the 2000s.
No, in the early 90s.
With whom?
I was thinking. I got to go back and look.
I think Olympic was 4A until like in the 2000s, I believe. They went 3A for a brief.
They were in the Gaston County conference in the 90s.
Oh, there was I think Hunter Huss or Ashbrook or both of them were 4As for a while.
Ashbrook, East Gaston, and Hunter Huss. You're right. You're correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But Burns was not in that. They weren't in that crowd.
I think they played in '93. They played Shelby, but we digress. They played in the playoffs, Shelby.
All right. So this next one here, this is the 3As, Northern Nash versus Southern Durham. I've seen Southern Durham play. They put a licking on Richlands beginning of the season, our first round. Scored 55 points. They have 55 points, but I'm going to tell you right now, probably half that points was generated from their great defense. I had a couple of scoop and scores and interception, and probably one of the best defenses I've seen. Northern Nash, though, it's just a little bit more of a complete team. I'm going with Northern Nash by about 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I thought just for a second there, you might be calling an upset. One of the things that really impresses me and it may not some, but I think that was a solid win for them last week. Um,
Oh yeah,
they're great,
beating
and I'm talking about Northern Nash.
yeah, beating Southern Nash, your one of your biggest competitors for the second time this year is a very impressive feat.
Exactly, in the playoffs. Yeah.
And holding
So
Southern Nash to 12 points is even more of an impressive feat.
right. So I like Northern Nash here. Southern Durham might make a little noise, but Anthony, you got anything? I'm sorry.
I agree with you. I think Northern Nash is to me they look like the clear cut favorite in this game Friday night.
This next game here, I know Triton is 28 seed and Jacksonville is a 20 seed. Jacksonville plays in probably the toughest 3A conference in the eastern part of the state.
Hmm.
I'd rather be a Jacksonville fan than a Triton fan. I think this game could get ugly really fast. I'm going with Jacksonville by about 3 touchdowns.
The reason I would go with Jacksonville is that they beat Havelock and didn't I didn't see that coming. So I like Jacksonville. I don't know. Both of these teams are here, and it's really odd that they're here at this point. But I'm picking Jacksonville in this game.
I would do the same thing, and the only thing about your logic, Dale, that I disagree with is that Havelock's been ranked pretty high the last 3 years running, and
Hmm.
they've fizzled out in the first or second or the third round of the playoffs. They never have even got to the semifinals yet.
Right.
They went to the state championship game and lost to I think it was Catholic maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
I thought it was about 4 years ago, but I could be wrong. But I don't know. They just seem like they've I don't know. They have underperformed, if you want to.
Yeah, I want to say probably over the last 6 or 7 years. That's definitely the case.
They have performed in the playoffs. Now they look good in the regular season, but whenever it comes
Right.
all time for some reason, and it's not against teams that are really that you would think that they would get beaten by. So I don't know. So I'm because of that reason. But because they still did beat Havelock, I'd go with Jacksonville for the same reason.
Right.
This is an interesting game. I know North Brunswick, I think, has lost one game. 71st is undefeated. I'm going with 71st. I don't think this game's even going to be close.
Yeah.
I'll give 71st by several touchdowns.
Same here.
Same.
All right, this is the game that I'm probably going to go to. Terry Sanford goes from down to Mebane, right down about 15, 20 minutes from my house. I've seen Eastern Alamance play 3 times this year. They have a very good offense. Their defense sometimes is a bend but don't break. But I like their spirit. And these kids at Eastern Alamance, of all the squads I've seen this whole year, they're having the most fun of any team I've seen. I'm going with Eastern Alamance. I like when you have players who are happy. A lot of times that means they're going to play just a little bit better and trust each other. I think it's a very powerful program what they have this year.
Certainly. The only thing you have to worry about with teams like that is if they haven't faced a lot of adversity, how do they handle adversity? Um, Maybe last week was a little bit of adversity, if you
Well, you
will.
know what? Last week's game was exactly what happened in the regular season. Eastern won in double overtime against Williams.
Hmm.
Williams is a more physical team. They probably have a little bit more speed. They don't have the confidence as Eastern Alamance, and also, to be quite honest, they don't have John Kirby on their sidelines. Nothing
Right.
against the Williams coach. It has everything to do with John Kirby. He's just an outstanding coach.
Sure. Donuts in Eastern Alamance's bucket. Mine is.
Well, I don't know. I'm sort of undecided about this game. Terry Sanford, they're averaging more points per game than Eastern Alamance is. I mean, you can't, but uh, I don't have I looked at an offensive comparison between the two teams, but I haven't looked at a defensive comparison between the two. Which one of these two teams do y'all two guys, Jim, you and Dale both? Which one do y'all think's got the best defense?
I think Eastern Alamance has the better defense. I think Terry Sanford also has a bend but don't break, but sometimes does break. They will. I mean, last week they gave up 55 points to Scotland. Scotland's a good team, but I don't think we've ever had them in the top 10 this whole year. Eastern just knows how to play really good team defense, but again, once you get to the within the 20-yard line, Eastern Alamance, their defense jails up. So that's kind of the reason why I'm going with Eastern also.
Well, I'll jump on your bandwagon there because the old saying, defense wins championships, and if it comes down to defense, I think if Eastern Alamance has got the best defense, then I think I would lean more that way.
All righty. Let's get up here to the.
I'm sorry, Sam Griner. I'm picking Kings Mountain. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, it's so I've watched. I've been to the two playoff games so far that West Charlotte has had. Very impressive. The good things I can say are that West Charlotte's played a brutal schedule because they play in the toughest 4A conference in the state. They've had to face Chambers, Mallard Creek, and Huff defenses. I think Kings Mountain's defense is on par with those defenses. And they've improved their offense. But I've seen Kings Mountain, and they are good. I mean, they are really good. So you have to be a lot of things go right for West Charlotte, and maybe a few things that go wrong for Kings Mountain for West Charlotte to win the game. I love Sam, and Sam knows this because I've already made the pick on this game in the Charlotte Observer, and I picked Kings Mountain. That's where my donut is.
Well, I'll agree with you. I think Kings Mountain wins by 14 or more. They do have home field advantage, of course, because they're playing. They'll be, they had the number one seed overall in the West, and I know West Charlotte's faced some good competition this year. But the thing that I like about Kings Mountain is they have an offense that you can't focus on one or two or three guys. I mean, there's about 7 or 8 different guys that either catch the ball or either come in and rotate in and out as fullbacks or wingbacks and run the ball that way. So you can't just concentrate on stopping one guy or a couple or 3 guys. I mean, because they got so many different weapons they can throw at you, and they got a pretty good defensive team too. So I'm leaning heavily toward Kings Mountain on this game.
Yeah, Anthony, in that South Point game, South Point has a really good front defensive line, and they penetrate very well. And
yes, they do.
I think they may lead 3A. I'd have to check this for tackles for loss. And in that game, they had several tackles for loss. Now, the thing that Kings Mountain was able to do was, they would run inside and they would run outside edge, but also they were able to flip around and throw the ball.
Right.
And that would kind of loosen up that defense a little bit. And so South Point had to be a little more honest with things. And
exactly.
yeah, that that offense is, I think, highly versatile. That's one of my points about them is that they're balanced on both sides. They've got good defense, they've got good offense, but on offense, they're balanced as
Yes,
well.
they are. Whenever are you talking about? Whenever you said in that game, you talking about in the game between Kings Mountain and South Point?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, in that particular game, they had let's see, they had 220 yards passing. Quarterback went 12 for 17,
Yep.
and so he can hit his target. They didn't throw any interceptions. They did, they didn't turn the ball over that way. Matter of fact, they didn't even have any fumbles that night. But yeah, they take care of the ball. The quarterback is whenever you go 12 for 17 against a not so ragged defense, that's pretty good numbers. And
Yep.
on top of that, they rushed the ball 35 times that night for 217 yards. So, they can hurt you both ways. They can hurt you through the air. They can hurt you on the ground.
So I got to say this, Anthony, and you'll remember the situation. Had a guy standing beside me at that game, and it was a little bit of a surprise. The game had opened up at this point, and uh, he's on ESPN radio, and he asked me what I thought, and I said South Point needs to throw the ball to 35. I don't know why they're not throwing it to 35. And I'm not making this up. I can get the guy to tell you the next play,
I know.
that touchdown pass that they threw to him. They threw, and was it a touchdown or did he get down
He got his eye.
inside the 5?
They scored on the next play. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something we'll talk about later.
Right.
We'll move on. is is Jim there? I'm sorry, I better check and see. He
I
may.
had my phone. I had my phone on mute.
Okay,
Led,
okay.
Ledford's lost one game. They lost to Grave earlier on, or I guess about sometime in October, and they have a very solid team. East Lincoln, I believe, is undefeated.
They are.
It's hard. It's hard for me to go against East Lincoln at this point. I think East Lincoln is going to win by about 10, 13 points or so.
I think it's hard to go against East Lincoln, but I think Lefford's got a good squad. Now, I'm not saying that in saying that I'm picking Ledford. I'm picking East Lincoln. My donut goes there, but I think it's going to be an interesting game and a somewhat close game. So, Jim, even your score would be kind of close.
I got East Lincoln by 13.
Okay.
All right, this next game is going to be fun. Crest, South Point. Crest, 14 seed, South Point, 11 seed. Only reason why they're not higher than that is because of a team called Kings Mountain that's in that conference. These two teams are just they're just incredible. That South Point win when they beat Dudley by 33 points, that just really shocked me quite a bit. Oak Grove, who was undefeated, uh, they lost to Crest by 27 points. That shocked me. I'm going with South Point on this game. I expect this is going to be a lot of emotions here. I won't predict the score, but I'll say South Point gets the edge.
So I know Anthony's probably going to be able to really fill things in here, but some things from the previous game that I think are highly important here as to why South Point won and won so well. South Point had 8 tackles for loss in that game. They had 4 sacks. They had 20 quarterback hurries. They had 9 pass defense plays where the defender made either a PBU or made the play to keep it from happening. And finally, they only punted once in that ball game. So
Right.
we're talking about an offense that, yeah, they've thrown 640 yards on the season, but they've rushed for 3,726 yards. So when you get a team like South Point And I gotta say, I really, 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 really like that quarterback. He's a freshman. Um, he's not the leading rusher on the team. He's the second leading rusher, but he's got over 1,300 yards and 17 TDs. Um, and and by the way, Jim, if you don't know, number 35 is his brother. He's a big 6 foot 5 guy that he plays at tight end, at split end. I don't know that they move him out into a wide receiver spot. I don't remember that, but they do at least split him. Um, I think that South Point has the right kind of offense this time of year and right kind of team. Very strong defensively, very good run team that's just stretches the clock out. However, they're facing an extremely good quarterback. So the kid's thrown for right at 3,000 yards on the season. Uh, he he's rushed for somewhere around 700 yards. So he's a threat on both in the pass and the run. Take it away, Anthony.
Well, in the first game, uh, you were pretty accurate with your all the stats you gave a while ago. Uh, South Point does in the first game. Way they somewhat controlled. They only had a 28-second advantage in time of possession, so that they held the ball for 24 minutes and 28 seconds. Well, a little bit more than that, and Chris had it for 23 minutes and 32 seconds. So
Great stat. Thanks for telling that. The,
but
the plays were about the same too, Anthony. Just
yeah, they yeah. See, South Point had a total of 40 plays. Crest had 62 plays that they ran. But South Point in the plays that
right.
went on drives, most of the time they were time consuming drives. And Blee only completed one pass in that game, but he completed to Aaron Chaney for a 43-yard touchdown. So, and then South Point had one pick that they ran back for a touchdown. And those, and the final score was 35-13, which looks pretty big. But if you take away those two big plays, it was a pretty close ball game. And so and really for the rest of the game, Crest probably dominated as far as more time of possession and more plays than South Point did. But South Point made their possessions count with points. However, like you made a very good point a while ago, and that's that their quarterback has improved by bushels since they played. They played in the 6th or 7th game of the season, so both teams have went through a lot of. Well, of course, all teams now are improved from when they were at the first of the year or at the beginning of the year. And if they did improve, they probably aren't in the playoffs. But this will be a good game. It's also hard to beat another team. We talked about this just a moment ago. It's hard to beat the same team twice in the same year, especially whenever. I won't say that they killed Press because they did. I mean, a 22-point win is not it's not that it's not a taking them to the woodshed type of thing like happened to Shelby last week.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be enough of a win to where if you're not careful, and you got to realize we're talking about high school kids here, where they might think, "Oh, we didn't beat these guys one time. We'll take care of them this time too." Well, exactly the same. These two teams met in the same round last year. Crest won the first meeting by a touchdown, and it went down to the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. South Point won the second go around, went by a touchdown in overtime. So I think it'd be a close game. I don't think South Point. I think South Point will win, but I don't think they'll win by more than 10 points.
So I'm just going to say this. I won't draw anything out. For the season,
Yeah,
Tavius Husky, the quarterback at Crest, He has a QBR of 122. In the South Point game, his QBR was 67.
Yeah, he did not have a good game against South Point.
Right. So he's going to have a better game for them to make it a game, I think.
Right.
And if he does, if South Point can't do the things that they did, it's going to be an interesting ball game.
Well, if South Point cannot contain him, if he lights the scoreboard up, I think that they'll beat South Point because South Point is a run it down your throat type of football team, and what they depend on is getting out ahead, and then just grinding the clock out, and then hopefully scoring on a majority of their possessions. Whenever you play a team like South Point, and I don't care what kind of color jerseys they wear and what their mascots are, but if you play a team like South Point that's run-oriented team, you got to figure you only get 4 possessions each half. That's it.
Right.
And so if you don't make those count, it's Katie bar the door. So we'll just see what happens. I think it'll be a good ball game, but hey, you never know.
Exactly. Got to play it.
Yep.
On this next game, West Henderson versus Eastern Guilford. Eastern Guilford is located in Gibsonville, and also obviously West Henderson's near I can't remember what's is in Hendersonville or one of the Flat Rock or whatever that town is. But West Henderson, they're undefeated. Eastern Guilford, if they can score a lot of points, my concern is with their defense. They give up a ton of points. I'm going with West Henderson. I think it's if it's a shootout, Eastern Guilford might have a chance, but I don't think West Henderson's defense is going to give up 42 points against Eastern Guilford. So I'm going with West Henderson.
I've kind of liked West Henderson for a long time this season, and I'm sticking with them. Throwing the donut in that bucket right there.
I got West Henderson by 13.
Okay.
They've had a good year this year, and their level of competition has been up there with I'd say with equivalent to what Ledford's played. So we'll have to see. I mean, if they had 1, 2, 3. I think they played 4 teams that made the playoffs in their regular season. So they've had a pretty good schedule. And they went through. They beat North Davidson and West Rowan, which was a good competition too, good team in the playoffs so far. So I'm going to go with West Henderson as well.
Okay. And finally, we're going to get to 4A.
All right, this Hillside Pine Forest game. This is my backup game. For some reasons, I don't go to Eastern Elements, but saw Hillside play last week. They have a very strong offense. Their defense had trouble against a very powerful Apex offense. They're very susceptible to a very good quality quarterback. I'm going with Hillside in this game. I think they've got too much against Pine Forest, but I have some questions about Hillside, about how far they're going to go after this week, though. But I think they'll survive another week.
Yeah, Jim, I'm with you. I got some questions now. I did not have questions, say, coming into the playoffs, but after I just thought they would beat Apex by more than 3 points. And I didn't think they would give up 43 points. So I don't think they should not, let's say, in my book, they should not have problem with Pine Forest. I'm putting a donut. The only thing more I'm gonna say, my donut's going to Hillside.
I'm in the same wagon as y'all two guys.
Okay, this game right here is a big one. I know a lot of people are really big on Millbrook at this point. Southern Alamance is a very, very uh, what's the best way to put it? They're bulky. They're they're not going to finesse you. They're going to run over you. Type of team. Millbrook is really strong right now. They've caught on fire, I guess, probably in the last 6 weeks or so. They had some issues off the off season where their coach resigned, which really shocked a lot of people. But uh, I'm going with Millbrook on this because I think they have the momentum. But this game could really go either way. I mean, I can see Millbrook winning by 2 touchdowns. I can see Southern Alabama winning by 10 points or so. But I'm going with Millbrook.
Yeah, I like Millbrook too, especially after last week. Although that really doesn't surprise me beating Cardinal Gibbons. Millbrook's got a good QB wide receiver combination. It's a good squad. I'm throwing the donut at Millbrook. Could it be close? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go with Millbrook, but by the thinnest of margins. Both teams are averaging 400, just a shade over 470 points for the year. Not averaging, but most of them have scored both of them scored just over 470 points for the year. Mm-hmm. Southern Alabama, though, has give up twice as many points as Millbrook has. So Millbrook gets the defensive edge there, and they are playing Millbrook, right? So
yes.
So I would give Millbrook the edge, but I think I'm like Dale. I think this could be pretty close.
And they got a strong quarterback playing at home, so
right.
Some of those that drives some people. Here's a good game.
Yeah, this is I guess, back until about, 10, 12 years ago, it was Wake Forest, Roseville High School. And actually back in the late 60s, there were 3 high schools. You got Dubois High School, which was the historically black high school. You had Wake Forest High School and Roseville High School, all 3 consolidated around 69. And anyway, there's a lot of, I'm not going to say there's bad blood between these 2 programs. There's a lot of competition between these 2 programs. These kids go to the same churches. They see each other. Their parents grew up with each other. Roseville, they came on the short end against Wake Forest earlier on the season. They really struggled out of the gates because they lost Martin Samick, good friend of mine, one of the best coaches in the last several years. I'm going with Roseville, believe it or not. I'm going to take an upset on this one. It goes against my grain, but I'm taking Roseville. I like them. It's a hard way to beat a team twice, so I'm going to shock people and go with Roseville on this one.
You're not shocking me because I thought I was going to be picking against you. So I like Roseville here as well. I think they've had a good run here in the playoffs. I think they're a good squad. They will have a lot to overcome. But, yeah, I like Roseville. Donuts there.
I lean more toward Wake Forest, and again, it's because of defense. Roseville's allowed over 120 points more on the season than Wake Forest has, and both teams are pretty close on as far as what the points for. And they are playing at Wake Forest, which gives them another slight advantage, I reckon. I don't think it'll be a big margin, and it is hard to beat that same team the second time around. So even though Roseville has their offenses scored a few more points than Wake Forest has, they gave up a whole lot more on defense than Wake Forest has. So I'm going to slightly lean more toward Wake Forest because of their defensive efforts.
Sure. I should actually have gone back and looked and see how my picks went earlier. Of course, some of my picks obviously are out. I didn't hit everything, but I'm just kind of looking for some upsets.
I hear you.
Ain't none happening here, though. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're looking for upsets, we need to go to the West, I guess, because New Bern will be all over Jordan. Jordan, though, is kind of like Houdini. I mean, they beat Jack Brett by just the smallest margins. They went
Mm.
to Southern Pines and they came from behind to win that game, and now they're in New Bern. I'm sorry, you're not going to get the genie in the bottle three times. New Bern and New Bern big.
Beating Pinecrest was a shock. Shock, a surprise. Okay. Hard to define or break down between shock and surprise. But New Bern is my team, has been my team to come out of the East to the state championship, and that ain't changing now.
Yeah, but I think the slipper falls off of Jordan this week as well. So I'm going with Newbern too.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this one's a big one right here. Grimsley versus Independence. I saw Grimsley play. They have D1 athletes all over that field on offense and defense. It is a fast team. Their quarterback has the fastest hands I've seen in years. Just a great receivers. Got two really great receivers on that. Bulky offensive line. Defense is really good. Independence, on the other hand, is on fire right now. These two teams might be in the top five best teams in the 4A's right now. I'm going with Grimsley just because what I saw with my eyes. If I saw Independence, I might think differently, but my bias is speaking here. I'm going with Grimsley.
So if you remember, I picked Independence to go all the way. And after seeing them, I don't change that thought. This team is an inspired team. I'm not going to say it was an interesting environment. And I don't want to say this is a Tom Nazier type team, but this team's a little different. They seem to be more excitable than Tommy's teams were. And I think that energy was is a good positive energy. Not that there wasn't one. It's kind of more of the Tommy Knott's teams were you had an energy of confidence. And it was just like strictly confidence, or mostly confidence. Whereas this team has mostly positive energy, excitement with a building confidence. So Donuts going for Independence, Grimsley could certainly take it.
I would also lean toward Independence just a little bit more. Uh, for I've not got to see Grimsley play, so I can't draw a comparison. But I like Independence's numbers whenever you compare them with Grimsley's numbers. But uh, it looks like it'll be a close game though.
Okay.
Now, this one right here is interesting. Huff versus East Forsyth. East Forsyth's pretty much been the top two in our top one in our 4A poll the whole year. Huff, if it's possible for a team that might be, I think we're ranked fifth in our top 10. If it's possible for a fifth ranked team to have a slightly disappointing year, that would be Huff right now. I think Huff has a little chip on their shoulder on this. I'm going to go with the upset on this. I know a lot of people will be surprised by this, but I'm taking Huff in this game.
I'm not surprised in the Charlotte Observer picks. I picked Huff. Huff from a power ranking is point one higher than East Forsyth. So they're the two strongest power rank teams. So I think they're kind of evenly matched. Huff has got probably the best defense. Not probably. They got the best defense in the state. They need to produce some offense. They've got a UNC commit at quarterback. They might have a little emotional advantage because one of those poor souls that was taken down in that shooting up in Virginia, uh, Chandler, that team, he played with the seniors that are on this Huff team. So there might be a little bit of emotion also that may inspire them. I picked Huff, and that's not changing. It's going to be a tough game, though.
So I'm going to go with first. I thought East Forsyth, but I got to thinking about what you just brought out about the collegiate player that lost his life this past week, and how that inspiration for those young fellas. Man, one of the best things that can happen for any athlete is for them to have a real reason besides themselves to play.
Yeah,
I think this might be one of those.
Exactly. There's what sets athletes or what the things that set players apart. Of course, athletic ability is one, but one's mental ability is another.
Right.
And if you can have emotion and reason to play and play with emotion, that's hard to beat.
That's right.
Jim, we can't hear you.
There we go. I keep on putting my phone on mute. Northwest Guilford surprised me last week when they beat Watauga. I'll say was surprised. I picked West, or I picked Watauga to win. I know you picked Dale. You picked West Guilford. Obviously, Northwest Guilford won. There was a kind of a statement for that team, to be honest with you, to go up to Boone. It's going on the altitude is not the easiest thing. So that they can travel. They don't have problems going to a tough environment. Going to Weddington is a tough environment. I think that's probably one of the 10 toughest environments in the state, if you ask me. That's some great fans over there. I'm going with Weddington. I just think Weddington's got too much for them.
Yeah, Weddington is they're one of those solid, fundamentally sound teams that has good players, great coaching. They're hard to beat. They're one of the hardest hitting teams you'll encounter. Physicality is a big thing with them. Yes, I did pick Northwest Guilford last week, but the elements that I thought would help Northwest Guilford aren't going to help them here. Weddington see speed, they see athletes, they see all that kind of stuff. And Jim, it is an awesome environment, as you pointed out. It's awesome environments like that can become a bit intimidating to some teams. I pick Weddington, maybe even by 2 scores. That's where my donut goes.
I'm going to side with Dale on this one, and I reckon you too, Jim. I'm going to go with Weddington as well.
All right, AC Reynolds. They've obviously, I think last week beating Chambers probably shocked a lot of people. I think I can't remember if I picked AC Reynolds or Chambers last week. To be honest with you, I knew there was going to be an issue with going for Chambers to go up the mountain. I think it's going to be the same thing with Butler. I think Butler's going to have trouble going up the mountain. I'm going with AC Reynolds. I have AC Reynolds ranked 9th in the top 10 and Butler 10. Being that game is over in Fairview, I just think there's just a little bit more than Butler can chew off at this point. But I would not be surprised if Butler pulled it off. But I'm going with the Rockets.
Well, you you make a good pick. It's not even a safe pick. Um, I like Butler as long as the quarterback can keep from getting into turnover city. I think if they get good QB play out of him, they can win this game. Um, it's going to be cold. It's going to be in the 30s up there. Probably humidity is probably going to set in a little bit, make it even colder. Um, that's the thing. Humidity helps you a little bit, maybe. Moisture can help pull heat off, but makes you hotter in the summer and colder in the winter. I like Butler, but I'm not going to be surprised at all if AC Reynolds wins this game.
I'm going to go with AC Reynolds on this one. I don't know. They've had a good season so far. Only one loss. Uh, Statistically, both teams are pretty even. There's only just a few percentage points separating either one of them in just about every category. So I think since the AC Reynolds has got the home field advantage, and I think this Friday night that's going to probably be a little bit more evident than it would be maybe earlier or in the year because of the cold and also because of the humidity, the moisture that's in the air, and I think that'll play in AC Reynolds' favor just a little bit more than it will Butler's. Butler's got a good team, and they can still possibly pull out a win. But if my gut says to go with AC Reynolds in a close one.
Honestly, that makes sense. It's not a safe pick by any means, or maybe it is a safe pick. I don't know how to put that, but it's a solid pick, I guess, is the way to put it. I'm kind of maybe looking for an upset. I don't know. It's good games. There's a lot of good games this week.
They are.
Uh,
There is.
So, guys, I'm going over to Providence Day to watch them play Charlotte Christian in the state championship. What are your thoughts on that game?
Well, me and you were talking today on the telephone about that deal. Sound like Providence is they're on an upward trend, and with some of the talent they've got in their stable, they look like they would be a clear-cut favorite to win this coming weekend.
Jim,
Well,
you got any comments?
didn't Charlotte Christian? They won the regular season, kind of a fluky thing, if I remember correctly. And
Yeah, and after you finish talking, I'll make a comment on that. But yes, they did.
I think that mentality where you have a chip on your shoulder, sometimes something like that memory just makes you play just a teeny bit harder, a little bit more with emotion. You're 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 playing not just to win, but also for pride. Uh, I think that right there kind of goes in that way. I think Providence Day is on the upward trend. This could be ugly, to be honest with you. I think Providence Day could win by several scores, even. So
this is a huge rival game, and just very, very close to each other, just right up the street. The way Chad Greer puts it, those guys up the street. The first game, Providence Day jumped out on top, 20-0, and in the first quarter, and then they kind of let up, and the players let up, not the coaching staff. And Charlotte Christian never gave up. So you got to give them credit for hanging in and playing. And two times in that game, they got down by 20 points. They pulled close, and then Providence Day pulled back out ahead again. And then Charlotte Christian won on a field goal there at the end of the game. Really an interesting outcome in a game that many thought going in would not be close. Chad Greer told me before the game it would be, and he reminded me that the last several times they had played each other, it was the team that had the ball last that won the ball game. Um, and that played out in this game. I don't know if he had a dream about it or what, but it certainly played out in this game. And Jim, you make some valid points about the chip on the shoulder. Don't undersell that, people. The fact that they're both very very good teams, but Providence has got to win this game. They're looking to make their program a national program, so they got to get past Christian consistently. Just get past them, and get past them. If they want to elevate that program up to a national level, which is where they're heading towards. So I think Providence Day wins this ball game, but I'm just, that's where I'm going to be. That's all I'll say. I was going to go to the Kings Mountain West Charlotte game, but one of my buddies that goes a lot to games with me, Spencer Owens, he's a photographer. He wanted to go to this game, and I think it'll be a great game to go to regardless. Great environment.
Are there going to be any Thursday night games this week?
Unless there's weather impacting, no.
What about Saturday?
Again, I don't think unless there's weather impacting, no. They like to play games on Fridays,
Right.
and they don't like to play games on Saturdays because what happens is players use that Saturday as days to go visit, schools that they're considering. So they go to a football game
Okay.
And so no, there's none scheduled.
Right.
But if weather impacts things, it could.
Okay.
But I hadn't heard of anything. Have you, Jim?
I have not, but I was thinking it wouldn't be cool to have like a Thanksgiving special. I'd rather watch the high school football than the NFL football any day.
Me too.
Yeah, I would too. I'm not a fan of the NFL. I've become less of a fan. It's hard to be a fan when your team sucks. And I can say that because they're a professional team.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel, Dale?
Yeah.
Well, my team standard for was Colt. Has always been the Colts, even back when they were in Baltimore. And Colts used to stand for count on losing this Sunday because they were under the Irsay family for years. So Irsays bought that from Carol Rosenblum. Basically, the Irsays bought the Rams franchise from the Reeves Trust, and then immediately sold it to or traded with Irsays or with Rosenblum. So Rosenblum ended up with the Rams, and later on his widow Georgia Frontier ran the Rams. Rosenblum was a great owner. Irsays were horrible. Robert Irsay is famous for one time getting in front of a bunch of politicians, just drunk, just smashed like 3 sheets to the wind, and it was very incoherent. Everybody was like, I don't know exactly what he said, and then next time he got in front of everybody and says, we are not leaving Baltimore. We're committed. And like within 3 days, there was like Mayflower trucks heading from Baltimore at night, going over to Indianapolis in the snow. So
I'm real familiar with Baltimore because my team played in conference with them. I'm a Dolphins. Was a Dolphins, and they're probably my number 2 team now.
You remember Bob Baumhauer? Well, that's my mother-in-law's first cousin,
Oh, wow.
and I met him. I guess it was back in 2009. One of the aunts was on her deathbed or getting close to it, and he's a big fella. He's about 6'4", 6'5", and he's probably like 6'3" now, but he was all crumped over. He had trouble walking. His hands are all bent and everything. But the nicest guy you'd ever meet, and he would actually spend time telling you stories and stuff. He's a guy that played his college career under Bear Bryant and his entire NFL career under Don Shula. And he
Hmm.
also had a great high school coach who was a legend over, I think it was over in Ohio or wherever he grew up. But he just a funny stories. He talked about how Jim Neighbors took him to first Pro Bowl. He went on Jim Neighbors' private jet, and uh, tell me these funny stories about Jim Neighbors and different stuff. And also, the old saying was whenever someone asked him where he went to school, he said, "I graduated from Alabama in '76." And they said, "Well, what'd you major in?" He says, "I can't remember that." This is a good, great guy, though.
Oh, yeah. I remember those days well, very well. Remember Baltimore? Um, you know who Earl Morrill? You familiar with that name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Earl Morrill, gosh, he was with the Bears. He was with the Lions. He was won a Super Bowl in Super Bowl five with the Colts, and then was replacing for Gracie. I mean, he was 41 years old until he hung it up.
Yep. 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 So, yeah, I
Uh,
remember
Paul
those years.
Paul Warfield was one of the best receivers. Warfield and Bob Gracie were roommates. Warfield started out with the Cleveland Browns, but I think Warfield, one of the most intellectuals of his time. Bob Gracie, one of the biggest intellectuals of their time. And they said they just talked about football, football, football. They talked about other stuff, but mostly football stuff. They brought that chemistry. I can't underestimate chemistry on this. I'd rather have a 4-star team or loaded with 4-star teams with great chemistry than a bunch of 5-star individuals
Yep.
that don't play like a team. It's a big difference. Chemistry is a big thing.
It sure is. You know, it's funny. I was scrolling Facebook by being a Dolphins fan. I follow a lot of the the Dolphins different Facebook pages, and one came up with a guy holding a glass with obviously bourbon in it. It was Larry Zonka.
You,
uh,
you know where you know where Larry Zonk is now?
where?
He's in Alaska,
Oh,
and
really?
I mean he had his own frontier show.
I didn't.
Jim Kick was like one of his best friends. Kick died recently. It's been just a
Yeah,
couple years or so. But I mean,
Zonka
I think
kicking Morris. Yeah, what a
they
backfield.
said they call was it Butch Cassidy and Sundance is what they were called.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't see any other comments. I tried to put up as we were going through different people's comments.
I see some YouTube comments, but I won't share that with.
Yeah, I see the YouTube comments. There's three of them. They're not bad. It just says "Find your love here."
Yeah, but read the name of it.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Well,
All right. Well, guys, it's getting past my bedtime, so I
yep.
better go.
I think, yeah. Anthony, I'm glad you made it in, and I'm glad we got your audio fixed.
Yes, sir.
So, you want to join us next week?
To my same time, same station.
Same time, same thing. I'll send you the link.
Okay then. Sounds good.
All right. And Garrett,
Same.
I guess Garrett's not out there, but he tried to get on. I even had him added in, but he kept dropping out. So, Garrett, get your technical issues fixed, brother. All
Pay
right.
your internet bill.
Good night, fellas.
All right, guys.
Take
Take care.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye.